So the next thing we might want to do here is look at column B, the percent of total. So what percentage of our total spend last year was on rent versus car versus insurance, all that stuff, right? So we can do this by entering in a formula, which is we take how much we spent last year in rent, A4, divide by the total amount spent, which is down in A16 that we had calculated earlier. So we see 48% of our spending last year was on rent alone, right? So now I'd like to be able to have that come all the way down, right? So I'm going to drag it down, and you'll notice immediately that something's not good, right? It doesn't divide by 0. So what happened? Well, if I go look at that, so it brought down the A4 to A5 like I wanted it to. But now look what happened. Instead of pointing to A16, it's pointing to A17, so it went down one. So the reason this happens is because we put it in as a relative reference. To stop that from happening, we can use absolute referencing or partial absolute referencing. For this, because it's going to stay in the same spot the whole time, I'm going to use absolute referencing. I'm going to tell it to always go to A16 when I'm doing that. So to do that, I come back up here, and on A16, notice that I'm inside of A16. It's between the A and 16. If I hit F4, it puts a $ in front of A, a $ in front of 16. That means that it's absolute reference. It's always going to go to A16. To see if this is true, I'm going to now drag it down. And yes, right, the A4 was not anchored or locked in, but the A16 was anchored or locked in, so it's always pointing to A16. So now I have everything that I need, right? So now I'm going to copy this guy. I'm going to paste special formulas just to keep that bold going right there, right? And as a sanity check, you could add up this. It better add up to 100%, right? So that's always a good sanity check right there to make sure that what we're doing is correct. So that's a good thing, right? All right, so what about this year's average per month? Well, so what that means is we want to look at the actual from January spend, the actual from February, March, April, all the way out, right? So I can't just do equal average, right, and then come over and do all this, right? That would be nice, but we have a non-contiguous set of data. So what I need to do is average. I clicked on actual for January, comma, and then I can either click or I can arrow over to the actual in February, comma. I'm gonna arrow over most of the time, comma. So after I type a comma, right, it wants another number. Come back to April. We're over to May now. Now we're to June. So this can be a little bit annoying when we don't have it nice contiguous. I'm going to go ahead and put in July and all the ones that are empty over here, July, August, all those months, right? And notice that one thing you should notice here too is that it's color coding each of these. So if you're not colorblind, that's a great thing. If you are colorblind, it's not super helpful. But it's color coding each different cell reference a different color. I forget how many colors it has before it has to loop around. All right, so I'm in November now, it looks like. All right, and then just one more to get me to finish up, which would be December. All right, so now close it off with the parentheses. So now the question is, well, those blank cells, sometimes they're kind of, in other types of things, it might count it as a 0, right? When it added all these guys up down here for the sum, it counted it as 0. Is it going to count it as a 0, or is it going to do the correct average? So this year so far, my average monthly rent is $1,200, right? It's going to be the same for rent all across because the rent didn't go up during that year. So it looks like it's doing it right because it has 1,200 in the first 6 and 0 in the other. You can always also from here, right? Let's do help on this function. Bring you over. So you can see that down here by looking at the help. It says if a range or cell reference contains text, logical values, or empty cells like we have, those values are ignored. Anything with a 0 though are included. So that's what we wanted. They were empty, so they were ignoring it for average. So that's good. We're doing it right. Click cancel here. I don't need to do anything different with that. So now in theory, right, I can copy this formula and paste it down below. If I paste though, what happens is that it gets rid of that formatting down below that I liked, right? So I'm going to hit Control Z. I'll do Control Alt V formulas. Click OK. Look at that. These cells were formatted as percentage. That's not good. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to hit Control Alt V again, and I'm going to do formulas and number formats. Copy, paste it down that way. Now we get the proper, right? It didn't mess up the cell formatting down here with the bold, right? So that's good. All right. So now we have the average for each one of those.